How is everybody doing? I have Dana Gray, the broadcaster of the Rockford IceHogs, on today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm very excited to talk all things Blackhawks hockey. So, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, man. Big fan of the pod, and I've watched a few of the guests that you've had too, and some of the draft picks. So excited to be on with you. You've
Yeah,
got a way
thanks.
better background than me too. You've already won in that department.
I don't know. That picture is very, very sick. Obviously, I love nature, so it is kind of cool to be out here. But um, yeah, so I wanted to talk to you
Yeah,
about some of your experiences being the broadcaster for the Ice Hogs, like how that kind of happened and just your journey.
yeah. It happened pretty quick, actually. Right around this time last year, I was working for the Cincinnati Cyclones, which or the ECHL affiliate of the Maple Leafs. And Mike Folta, who was the broadcaster here for a couple of years, got the Utah radio job for their inaugural season. And that was a couple of weeks before the NHL campaign started. And so it set off a little bit of a domino effect. So it happened really quickly. I think I drove up the day before our opener last year. So it was a bit of a whirlwind, but everyone here is so awesome. I grew up in Boston, so the Midwest kindness and welcomes are a little bit unnatural territory for me. There were a few moments like coming in, and I was like, wow, everyone's really damn nice here. This is awesome. So they were very helpful while my pants were on fire getting set. But yeah, it was a great first year, and it's been awesome to have a little bit of runway this summer to feel more prepared and know the ropes a little bit and know the organization better going into year two.
Growing up in Boston during 2013 for the Stanley Cup, were you rooting for the Bruins? And what was that like?
Oh yeah, I had a funny story about that. Actually, I was watching. Yeah, I don't remember. I think I was in middle school, and yeah, was a big Bruins fan growing up. And I mean, that series was so awesome. That playoffs was so awesome. And I remember watching Game Six at home uh, in my house with my dad, and the tying goal getting scored. I don't know. I was like probably in sixth or seventh grade, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I like went to my room to try and mentally prepare for this overtime of like season on the line. And I don't think I had like a phone at the time. And so I went to my room after the Hawks tied the game. And I come back in 15 minutes later after the intermission, and I'm seeing the Hawks skate around with a cup on the garden ice. And I just turned to my dad. I'm like, what on earth? What did I miss? And I think he just said something like 17 seconds, and that
Wow.
was it. So now I'm on the now I can appreciate the other side of it, and even I remember too. Obviously, it stung as a Bruins fan. It was just you still couldn't acknowledge just the sheer gravity and insanity of winning the cup basically in like the blink of an eye. I guess other than 2010 against Philly. But yeah, it was wild. Happy to be on the right side of things now.
So if you saw Dave Bolin or Kruger who scored, would you what would you tell them?
That's even funnier because I guess this isn't Blackhawks connected, but we had Zach Sanford on the team last year, and I was actually at that Game Seven Bruins Blues in Boston. I was just at the end of my college, I think maybe my end of my junior year, and I was at that game with my dad, and I had shelled out far too much of my savings at my summer job at Dunkin' Donuts to buy us tickets in the last row of the balcony. He's been this lifelong Bruins fan and would go to the Garden in the 70s. And I was like, okay, this is worth it. They got a chance to win the cup tonight. I want us there. And so I surprised him with tickets. And of course, St. Louis pretty much from the jump dominated that game. And Zach Sanford, who's a mass guy or a New England guy, scored the fourth goal to basically ice it. And so I went up to Zach, I think in like the second week of the season um, last week, and told him the story. And he said basically, oh, I owe you a couple grand for those seats or something like that. So, but it's interesting. I mean, I can remember being in, obviously, I've always wanted to be a hockey play-by-play broadcaster. Like that's kind of always what I've wanted to do. But I really have 7 or 8 years ago kind of just turned that fan dial off, and it was just kind of happened naturally. So it's funny to replay those moments where I felt so invested, and now just be on different sides of it and appreciate it a little bit differently.
Well, I hope he gives you the money, first of all.
Yeah, I'm not
And
banking on he just signed in Europe, so I think he's running away from that.
yeah, that's why. You're a Boston guy. So Dunkin' Donuts, and you worked at Dunkin' Donuts. They changed their name to Dunkin'. What do you think about that?
I'm all for it. Frankly, I've called it probably Dunkin' a higher percentage than Dunkin' Donuts. I think anyone in New England does. Usually it's Dunks, honestly. Dunks or Dunkies are probably the two most common, but I'm okay with the name shit. Do you feel strongly about it? Do you miss the donuts part of it?
Well, I was watching this YouTube video. I think it was Hot Ones with Bill Burr, and he didn't know that it was changed to Dunkin' yet, and he was just like,
Yeah.
I do not like that. So, I think it's funny. Um, it's good. I like their donuts and stuff. So I'm
They
not.
do have good donuts. I think if you're confused about what Dunkin' sells and you need the title to spell it out, that's on you. So uh, uh, not to bash Bill Burr. He's about as Boston as it gets. That's hilarious.
I completely agree. That's hilarious. I wanted to ask like about your I made it to the broadcasting moment. Was there a
Mm.
specific game you were calling, or was there just like a moment that you were like, wow, this is it?
I mean, there were a couple of great moments last year, even though I've been doing this for a little while now, but just with the amount of prospects and pressure of sorts that it felt like is on the Ice Hogs last year and even this year, knowing that there's just so many eyeballs as far as the Chicago fan base and organization to make sure that these guys pan out. I think of a Colton Dock overtime goal last year when he came back from injury. Watching Frank tear up the entire American Hockey League for the first 2 months. So, but I don't think that really, answers, I guess, the broadcasting question. When I was maybe it was my first year after graduating school, I was living in New York City actually, and working for a company called Bleacher Report, doing some hosting and podcasting stuff for their hockey side, while still calling games from a freelance standpoint, mostly college. And there is a event that's hosted at MSG, Madison Square Garden, every year that involves a couple different teams. It's always been, usually Cornell, Yale, Harvard, those sorts of teams that have those big alumni bases still around New York City, and they play a game there. And I got to broadcast Harvard Yale at MSG, and I think I was maybe 22, and that was very, very special. That was very cool. I remember Harvard blew them out. There were a lot of cool players actually in that game. Henry Thrun, who's now in the NHL. Um, Donato's kid, not Ryan Donato, Ted Donato's son was in that game. So there were a lot of cool names, but just being in that building and feeling like this is an NHL broadcasting booth, that was pretty special. And I guess the last one too was my first week here last year. I got asked to jump on with John Weideman for the Hawks opener when they were doing a little bit of a rotation of folks on color, and that was super special because I grew up, listening to different broadcasters, and John was even with the Worcester Ice Cats at the time, which was kind of a localish team for me. So I remember hearing about him. So that was pretty darn cool, and good Hawks win against the Sharks too.
Do you have like top broadcasters that you kind of modeled your craft on?
Yeah, I don't know about I definitely have taken different things, I think, just subconsciously from tons of guys. Uh, Growing up in Boston, Dave Gosher, who's now the TV voice of the Vegas Golden Knights, was always a really big voice in my head. He was with the Bruins doing radio, and I've always, I think, maybe appreciated radio broadcasting and broadcasters just a little bit more because you're so reliant on how they do their job. Not to say that, TV play-by-play isn't important, but at the end of the day, you could mute the screen and know what's going on in the game. So I had such appreciation for him. I mean, the easy answer is easy and honest is Doc. That was I
Mhm.
have so many like I get nostalgic thinking about watching playoff games, even if it wasn't a team you rooted for. Just I don't know, Caps Rangers or Pens Wings, Hawks Wings, like series like that I kind of grew up with in the 2000s. And Doc is always the voice for those. So, but there's so many different guys. I mean, I remember even though I was from afar, like Pat Foley calling
Yeah.
games and the way he would hit big moments and just put the perfect icing on the cake of so many great, and, he had a lot of great moments to call too, but that was always a big voice that I certainly looked up to.
Like him and Eddie Olczyk were like Batman and Robin. It was like they were both Batman. It was just incredible.
It was the dynamic duo, and I even think
Yeah.
of Eddie with Doc too. I mean, that's such a huge piece too that I think I've even as I've gotten older tried to listen even closer to some really great color analysts that do big market games because that's so important as a play by play voice to try and figure out how you can incorporate your partner and teeing them up and creating flow and obviously the analyst is a huge part of that. So yeah, Eddie's pretty top notch as it gets with
Yeah.
that.
And the last broadcast question would just
Yeah.
be, if there's one person, like past or present, that you would love to call a game with, who would it be?
Ooh, I love that question. That's awesome. Uh Past or present that works in broadcasting or even like a player or something like that.
Anybody. Anybody.
Anybody, man. This is going to be, I guess, a Boston-y answer, but it would be pretty accurate. I've always thought that Patrice Bergeron is just such a phenomenal hockey mind, and I think that's one of the things that obviously you're looking for out of a partner and an analyst. And I think if he ever got into broadcasting, that would be pretty darn cool. I'll say even Duncan Keith too, just for the accent, and he's such a great the way that he thinks the game, and I've heard him on a few podcasts, and uh, to be up in the booth with someone like that would be pretty great. Like two passionate guys that just love the game and can see it in a different light. I feel like those are the most important things to be thinking about. That's an awesome question. I'm going to think about that more tonight. That's good.
Yeah. Both of those guys live and breathe hockey, so like
Right.
that would be awesome. That really would.
And that feeds off, right? Like I think I think of even like Pierre Maguire. I saw this morning he
Mm.
just joined the I think the Penguins radio
Yeah.
team to do some hosting. But I remember when he would be inside the glass, he could be talking about I don't know. He could tell you where Kruger summered and is it the same ice cream shop that Bobby Orr's nephew? Like he's just like so passionate about sharing the stories and the players, and I feel like that's what you want on a broadcast. So I'll go with those two.
When I was flying back from the rookie showcase like a couple days ago, like the third, the
Yeah,
game that was on the TV was '07 Penguins versus Red Wings, and all you see is like Pierre Maguire like in the middle of the ice, just like talking about Crosby, and Crosby's just looking over and he looks over and it's just like a great moment. Like he always does the inside scoops. It's awesome.
it's kind of wild. I remember like though that was such a new idea. Now I think inside the glass or between the benches,
Yeah.
that just feels kind of like a normal part of the broadcast. But I remember that was so fun. It was that, and then I remember it might have been the Kings Rangers Cup final, or it was around that time. It was probably before that actually, where they would cut to the goalie in the net cam. So usually
Oh, okay.
you'd kind of just
Yeah.
be staring at the goalie's butt. Like that's what you could see for the most part.
Yeah.
But they'd like show replays of goals. And I thought that was like the coolest, innovative new broadcast thing around that time too. So yeah, come a long way, I guess.
Yeah, the goalie butt cam was great, but I think it did need a little innovation. Just but
Definitely a new name.
yeah, I agree. I wanted to ask like about your experiences watching Artem Levshunov last year, Kevin Korchinski. I mean, the Blackhawks Rockford IceHogs team or affiliate is basically an NHL team. and the next few
Yeah.
years it's just loaded. So how is that experience watching those guys?
We were touching on it a few minutes ago. That what was so exciting coming in right off the jump last year is every NHL and AHL team across the league, I think, has a different partnership, and every NHL team values the American Hockey League a little bit differently. And it's so clear then and to me now, and only more and more, that Kyle Davidson and the Blackhawks as a whole really see so much potential in what the AHL can do for their players. So that was really great right off the hop. And then secondly, yeah, this is the time where those draft picks the handful of years ago are starting to make this jump and leap. And you have guys like Frank and Landon Slager that started out the year last year in Rockford, and you get to see them really make that growth and learning the pro game better and better, and then to go on and excel. I mean, there were so many guys last year. I think of a Nolan Allen who started the year up there defensively. Wyatt Kaiser, who's been in
Mhm.
Rockford a lot over the last couple of years, felt like really took strides. Kevin Korchinski, of course, too, which is such an interesting story because 2 years ago he goes and plays 76 NHL games because of the rule. He couldn't actually play in the American Hockey League for his rookie season. And I remember being kind of curious at the start of last year that, okay, how is this kid going to take now being at the AHL? Not that, of course, he doesn't understand the rules and regulations, but you just spent a full season living out your dream, being in the National
Yeah.
Hockey League, and now you're asked to come and train your skills and hone and try a few different things. And I can't say enough good things about Kevin as a person and how he trained. And I thought he looked great with the NHL club when he got up there too, and really listened to what the coaching staff and the Hawks were looking for him to work on, especially from that defensive side. So I'm excited to see what jump Korchinski can make here in the junior season. And yeah, you mentioned Arty. There were a bunch of times last year where the only words that came to my head would just be the Artyom Levchinov experience. Like you just kind of, from the start of the season, you didn't really know what you were going to see in a lot of ways because he's so new to the North American game. This is a kid that's very, very far away from home, has lived a wild 2.5 years. He was just up in the USHL and then 1 year at Michigan State and then gets thrown in. And of course, the injury, I think, to start last year, too, where he missed that really valuable camp. It's only been 1 day of the rookie camp down at Fifth Third. And I think we're already starting to see some of the benefits of what he's going to be able to do just with a full camp and being around those NHL players. So the raw talent is incredibly clear. And it was so cool to have a front row seat as the season went on and he got more and more comfortable to his game and taking more chances offensively, feeling more confident in his game on the back end when he goes back for puck retrievals. It's kind of a lost art, it feels like a little bit. Maybe that's too strong, but I guess it's so valuable to have a guy who can be his own goal line and get to the red line and get it deep with possession. Like that's something that I think gone are the days of big defensemen lugging it up to the neutral zone and dumping in a lot of ways. You need to be more crafty about it. And that was a part of his game that I felt like really grew. And then, yeah, in the playoffs, I thought he was one of the best players for the IceHogs. They got to play 7 postseason games. He scored an overtime goal in the first round in Rosemont. And I was excited to see how great he looked up in Chicago, too. I thought his debut, I think he played some of his best hockey when he was up with the Blackhawks in the season. So just goes to show you how much of a man he is and how strong he is. And when he starts to continue fine tuning a little bits of parts of his game and that confidence starts to grow, like look out. Like I'm so excited to see what he can do this weekend in Minnesota.
Yeah, since we're talking about Artie, the Blackhawks scouts had compared him to Charlie McAvoy, who is a Boston Bruins guy. Obviously, you grew up watching the Bruins, but do you see a lot of like Charlie McAvoy or that kind of defenseman in Artie?
I think a little bit, yeah, especially with almost the stride a little bit in their gait from it's a little bit of a wider skating stride, I think if that kind of makes sense. There were a few times in the first couple months of the season where I remember Arty would go back for a puck or he'd be skating it up on a breakout and it almost would look like he wasn't even skating. Like he takes these big like exaggerated skiing strides, but he covers so much ground, and it's just a testament to how strong he is. And I think I see a little bit out of that out of McAvoy too, and the strength for both of them is there. And it was fun to see Artie wake up to that. I felt like maybe there was a time in February or March where he started to realize, well, I can really like I can bully guys around here, down low, in front of the net. He started to get a little more fiery, get into a couple more scrums, and not saying that him dropping the mitts or getting that side of the game, I think is what everyone's looking for him. But there was definitely something that switched in him that said, or made him realize that he could use his strength and size in this league. So yeah, I see it a little bit, and obviously the offensive outbursts and shot is fantastic, and I think the goals and the points are only going to come more and more as his confidence grows.
Being in Rockford and watching all the games, do you think that there's a prospect that kind of is overlooked that a lot of Blackhawks fans are not talking about?
Yeah, I like this. I like this question. There are two that come to mind, and it's starting to not be overlooked. But Samuel Savoie is one of it's some of the most fun I've ever had watching a player play hockey. One, because he loves hockey so much. This kid, all he talks about is going balls to the wall for every shift. And I remember reading the scouting report up on him and some of the comps to Andrew Shaw, and that's a lofty comparison. Obviously, that's a guy that involved in cups and had some really heroic moments and was such a core piece of some really great teams. But I understand the comparison. I'd say that Savoie's even got a lot more speed than Shaw did. Not that it has to be about the comparison, but he's an incredibly fast skater. Like I said, his intensity on every shift is ridiculous. He gets at least one hit on every shift, and I'm not just like throwing that out as a throwaway sentence. He makes body contact almost within the first 10 seconds every time he jumps on the ice. If it's forecheck, if it's tying someone up in the neutral zone. And I was just so impressed. And it was really cool with our end of year availability last year. I asked him just what his feelings were looking back at this season, because this time last year, he was starting his first year after suffering a really tough femur injury when he had so much promise and excitement to start his pro career, and then before the year even starts, he suffers this really tough injury. And he just said he was so proud of the way that his season went last year. He was the only Ice Hog that played all 72 regular season games, all 7 playoff games, and he said he felt great through it. That alone, I think, is a win. And then to feel that he's just an energizer bunny. He's got jam, and I hope he's someone that starts to get more and more looks over the next year. The other quick one that I'll touch on, and we only saw him for a couple of weeks at the end of the year because he was finishing out at Denver, but Aiden Thompson's a really great talent. That is a guy that was a third rounder 3 years ago, got stupid speed. Just like he immediately came in, joined the pro ranks, and was driving his line. And he was playing on a line with Cole Gutman, who is a really great AHL, NHL up down player, and Zach Sanford, who doesn't need much explanation there. So I'm really excited to see what he can do in year 2. And with a full offseason going into the pro year, that's someone that I'm definitely excited to keep eyes on throughout this next season.
Yeah, and you bring up like a good point with the Andrew Shaw and Savoy. I know that early on, I think like 2 years ago, everybody was talking about Savoy, and then there's just been just an assortment of different prospects that have been drafted, so that you kind of just like fall down the pipeline and not really talk about. But I wanted to talk about another, kind of like hot topic right now in the AHL world, and that's like the benefit of like 19-year-old junior hockey players going to the AHL on a potential loan. And I know that they were talking about it going this year, but now they're going to say they're pushing it back to next year. Like, what do you think that would kind of just help improve it for prospects and their development going to the AHL?
Yeah, I'm such a fan of this league. I think anyone that comes to a game or watches the AHL regularly can tell that there is so much talent here. And it's a really cool mix. You have players who are maybe at the end of their career that still feel like they have a lot to give. Really great players that used to be mainstays and with this up and coming talent that is trying to live out their dreams of jumping to the NHL, and get that mix, and it creates really high intensity hockey. It's incredibly fast, and I think that this league does wonders. And I know that I'm not alone in thinking that, because obviously the Blackhawks value this league and see Rockford as a really, really big piece of the puzzle to the Chicago rebuild. So that alone, I think, makes it really exciting to know that you could get, maybe a really top end prospect that would be going back to juniors, or in this sense with Korchinski, you look a couple of years ago, maybe he doesn't go right to the NHL. Maybe he's here in Rockford. So I think that's only a good thing. And I would just say as a close that I implore people it's the second best hockey league in the world. And there are plenty of players at this level that can go up, prospects or not, and be more than serviceable in the NHL. So it creates a really interesting balance and dynamic. I love watching and seeing the 19 and 20-year-olds interact with guys that are 33, 34, and I think we have some really great guys as far as veteran leadership down here in Rockford that really is passionate about helping guys learn the pro game, even if that's like how to do your laundry, like how to fuel your body, those little things which kids coming from high school and then college or billet families or any of that stuff, it's just like things you don't learn. And now you're thrown right into the fire and learning pro hockey. So it's really valuable to have those veteran players, and obviously they're heck of players too.
So if somebody is going to go to a Rockford game for the first time, is there like a specific event that they should target on their calendar just like a specific event that they should go?
It's a good question. Well timed too, because last Friday we announced our promotional schedule for the upcoming season. We've got a lot of $2 Friday night beer nights for those that are aged responsibly and want to have a good time, have a tall boy, watch some of the future of the NHL. I think one weekend that I'm really excited about is, I think it's February 14th and 15th. We're going to be honoring the Blackhawks centennial. I know there's maybe a specialty jersey throwback of sorts in the works there. So that's certainly a weekend to keep an eye on. Another weekend would be when the Hershey Bears come to town. Rockford and Hershey is not really a common matchup, and the Bears and the way that the Capitals use that team, they were two-time champs going into last year. They're always a great team, and that's just a fun way to see a different side of the league. And the last one I'll give you is, I want to make sure I have the date right. It is our Drew Commesso bobblehead night. We were actually talking with Drew last week, and we could talk more about him from the hockey side. He's just a fantastic man, has really embraced his time in Rockford with the community. He was our team's man of the year for the AHL last year. Just does a lot outside of the rink. And at some point, I think maybe it was going into the playoffs, he was a first star, and one of the folks on our media team put some shades on him when he went out for his post-game interview and kind of caught on the Pit Vipers. And so we've got a bobblehead night for him with that. And I was texting, hey, is this something you'd be interested in or okay with us doing a bobblehead? And he was all on board and even brought up the sunglasses himself. He was like, those have to be included. We were like, we're way ahead of you, man. So that'll be a good giveaway to time out if you want to come out and see a game. They're a blast. I was telling you before we jumped on, it's the perfect size rink for this league. It's just over 6,000. It's almost always packed. The presentation value is fantastic. There's a lot of similarities that you'll see as far as the LED board and things that go on during the game. That's teamed up with the United Center. So it's awesome for minor league hockey. It feels right there at the top, and I can say that because I've been to a few different spots around the league, and a Tuesday in Iowa doesn't maybe feel the same as a Friday night in Rockford. I'll say that.
I will link that the interview with Drew Commesso in the description. That is awesome. I wanted to talk a little bit about like Drew Commesso and just the kind of
Awesome.
person he is and some fun facts about him over the course of the year, as well as just the talent you saw.
Yeah, he's an awesome guy. He really is, and I think that he would be the first one to say that his season didn't start out the way he really wanted to. He wasn't playing badly at all. You wouldn't say that, but I don't think it was up to the level that he was hoping, and certainly the level that he got to in the second half of the season and into the playoffs. For the final 2 months of the year and into the postseason, for my money, he was the best goaltender in the AHL. There's a lot of really good goalies in the AHL that are developing their way up. So that was fantastic to see. He had a run through March and April where 4 shutouts, he was giving up maybe a goal or two a game, if that, and he just seemed so locked in. One thing I really like about Drew, though sometimes in the moments it can be not frustrating, but it's a common interviewing problem that I guess broadcasters have to try and find ways to work around. But you try and ask him about his game, or maybe he just stopped 41 of 42 in a big win. And he's talking about the 6 defensemen in front of him and the communication style that they had and how great the team broke the puck out. That obviously that's a big piece of the puzzle too. But he is, for a 23-year-old, he is a pro's pro. And he really, I think, has the mental mindset to be a successful goalie in the NHL for a long time. There's one story that I've told a couple times when I think it was February 28th. We were down in Tucson playing the Roadrunners, the Utah Hockey Club's affiliate, and Drew had been out for about 3 to 4 weeks, kind of with a little nagging lower body injury. He was about to make his first start after that injury. And game was starting at 7 their local time, and maybe around 6:15 that time the news broke of the Spencer Knight trade and
Yeah.
Seth Jones, and which obviously was a massive blockbuster. And anytime I think your team makes a trade, it's a big deal, but especially with goalies, it's the one position where you can kind of see the depth chart through the entire organization all the way to the ECHL. And I remember Drew find out actually the news. I think someone had mentioned something in the training room. He perked up and he's like, "What was that?" And heard the news. And obviously him and Spencer are really close and have a great relationship, but it's a big move. And he kind of just sat there, took it in, and then kind of just got refocused. And I went back up to the booth to get ready for the game. And I was thinking, man, he's either giving up 5 goals here in the first period, or he's going to be lights out. And it was the latter. He was dominant throughout that game. And that game set him up to go on this 20-25 game plus run, the best that he's been as a pro and into the playoffs. So, I asked him about it a couple times and downplayed, that moment maybe a little bit of what it meant. But of course, that's a big deal for any pro seeing a big move get made at the NHL level. And he only took it and used it as motivation. And I'm so excited to see what hopefully a full year of that Drew Commesso can be like.
Yeah, he was scorching hot at the end of the year. I mean, even before it was like second half, but if you haven't watched like Rockford games, he was incredible. Like you said, he was probably the best AHL goalie, and I have no no arguments there. But
Yeah.
to close out this interview, I wanted to ask, like, what is one thing your colleagues know about you that fans probably don't?
One thing my colleagues know about me, I guess kind of like a two-parter, is over the last few years, gotten really into running. I'm actually running the Berlin Marathon in 9 days. I'm
That's awesome.
trying to do all of the six major marathons around the world. And yeah, I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes like 3 or 4 years ago, and and I didn't run at all.
Hmm.
And it wasn't really something that I started doing for physical health wise, but maybe kind of from a mental side, just to feel like you were doing things that your body could still do after changing up my routine quite a bit. So that's something I'm really passionate about, and um, definitely excited to run again. In a couple of weeks, I did Chicago 2 years ago, and that was the last marathon I did. But something that I try and work into my daily routine, and it's really fun on the road too. Like when we go to Winnipeg or Austin and getting to run around different cities on game day mornings and explore. That's something that I like to do. Yeah.
Well, it's very cool that you are going to do that in Berlin. Berlin's my favorite vacation I've ever taken. I studied abroad in Bremen and we were in
No
Berlin a
way.
bunch. It was awesome. We did this like
Oh,
bar
you'll all
crawl
right. You
and
gotta
there were
you gotta DM me some ideas.
yeah, it was all like honestly, there's so much you could do there. It was one of my favorite experiences of all time. Also, like in Hamburg, which is not too far, there's this climate change house or climate house, or not climate change, it was a climate
Huh.
house. And it was like 50 different climates that you could go into. So it's like Antarctica and then the desert. So it was crazy, all in these different
Whoa.
rooms. Yeah, that was
All
probably the
right.
coolest thing I've
All
ever
right.
been to. Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna take some notes. I'm hoping that just with the timing of camp and the season started, I'm flying there on a Saturday morning,
Mhm.
running Sunday, and then flying out Monday morning. So it's not going to be a massive sightseeing trip,
Gotcha.
unfortunately. But I did just hear that Oktoberfest is starting that weekend over in Germany. So
Oh, wow.
maybe a post race pretzel will be in order. But yeah, I'm excited. I've never been over there, so I'll take any Rex.
Well, that is awesome. I really appreciate you joining me. This is going to be just a fun season watching you and the Rockford IceHogs. So thank you so much for joining me. And now's your time, like a Hot Ones video here, here, and here. Tell everybody, just where to find you, what to expect.
Yeah, well, get out to an Ice Hogs game. Like really, I can't say enough. IceHogs.com. We're gonna have a new website and a new app even here in a few weeks. And I mean, there's so many great reasons to come out as far as seeing the really quality players, but it's a great time. And there's always something different too. In minor league hockey, like we've got British Invasion promotional night. We got a Star Wars night. I don't really know what the British Invasion night means
Yeah,
quite yet, but I'll get back to you on that.
that's
But yeah, that's the plug. IceHogs.com, and tickets are going on sale actually this Friday for individual games. And you, my friend, you don't need a ticket though. You let me know when you wanna come on down, and we'll get you hooked up.
I appreciate that. I'm definitely coming down to a Rockford IceHogs game this year. Maybe multiple. The $2 beers is
Maybe
pretty incredible promo right there.
it's tough to beat. It's tough to
Yeah, you
beat
can't
from
beat
an
that.
economical standpoint.
Thank you so much. Everything's going to be in the description. Your ex and the Drew Commesso interview is going to be in the description. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. See you guys next time.